For me, it has always been something that I've felt like I was observing at a distance. And even though I might feel attracted to certain New Age ideas, um, I've always been kind of repelled by the black and white nature of New Age thinking. And so, what I mean by that is that I like to consider possibilities, but I feel like a lot of people, they take New Age thinking to a point where they are right. And if you don't agree with them, you're you're just not awakened enough, or your pineal gland is calcified and you're just not vibrating
Yeah.
at at the same level.
Yeah.
And so it is very condescending to me,
Mm.
and it also kind of it's a kind of snobbery. It is very revealing because it's actually showing stupidity.
It's kind of dangerous, the New Age notion of, oh, it's just an illusion. You know, it's kind of like it leads to people thinking like, well, nothing here in this incarnation matters. You know, nothing that we're doing on Earth really matters in the physical. You know, it's all more spiritual. You know, you ain't got to worry about these earthly matters kind of thing. You know, trying to be all, you know.
People hold a certain attitude, and I'm not putting towards anyone personally, but some people have certain attitudes that they are not really open to new ideas anymore because, and that touches on what Bill Hicks always said, like it's a choice between fear and love. Like either you're at the closed state, you just want to reaffirm your own beliefs,
Mm,
but you don't want to listen to something that challenges something you don't want to hear. And I think a lot of spiritual growth actually comes from things you don't want to hear, and like these are pretty painful to the ears, but actually they serve you at a long term. And that's why like a lot of spiritual is also like long term thinking, or like what I do. I play chess against myself. This is not a spiritual practice in the way that you can find on the internet, but I use it as a spiritual tool because it helps me to become unbiased. I play from both sides. I just check what the best move is, and it helps me to stay objective. It doesn't matter for me who wins because it's about me. So I think, why isn't that a spiritual practice within itself? Like if it helps you balancing out your brains, then where do I need
yeah.
to sit on another position?
It's a personal thing, and I like I really respect that because that kind of stuff is really important. I would advise not to bring that up at any first dates, but I would I would say that truth uh, does not need you to defend it. A lot of people, when they discover things that they feel like, no, this is my truth, they start to cherish it. But they feel like if they would share it, it could get damaged, and their worldview gets confused with truth. And in my opinion, I feel like truth is like a lion. When you set it free, it'll roar, it'll rip through everything. Real truth is like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But when you have this worldview that actually cannot be damaged, because if it would be damaged, then you wouldn't really know who you are anymore, and that's probably not truth.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I used to think like that. You know, the lion. You know, truth being the roaring lion and everything, but yeah, truth doesn't really speak for itself. We have to be the conveyors of truth because,
Oh yeah, yeah. You have to be the lion.
right?
Mm,
Yeah, I like that.
mm,
Yeah,
mm.
we are the lions. But
Lion of Zion. Mm,
going back to natural law, first cosmic principle. It's all about your state of mind. And
mm.
yeah, Jasper, of course, like you said, the trinity of consciousness. You know, the heart, mind, guts, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
the other
sorry.
overlooked principle, Passio talks about it as well. Of course, the eighth lost principle, which is the generative principle, which is really that heart center that really generates things. It's the genesis of pretty much what you either want or need or desire more or less, and what you care about as well.
Yes,
Like for
exactly.
me,
Care.
just an example of how the first time, a significant impact in my life, meeting my then wife.
Mhm.
heartbroken and stuff, no luck with women, I literally cried out to the universe. I was weeping. I couldn't, you know, remember a time where I wept so hard, just being such a hopeless romantic in a sense. I was like 22, 23 years old and stuff. And so, yeah, went through the whole stages of being hopeless. And then you kind of try to carve out the image, you know, using the imagination, which is that, you know, magic. You know, that ideal woman that you want in your life, you know. And yeah, she kind of came along. And what do we need to do? It doesn't just fall in your lap, you know. You have to kind of make the effort to introduce yourself and yada yada. So that's the action part of it. You have to have the courage to step up and say hello. You know, I was in France meeting a woman from Tahiti, in Italy at the time, and yeah, it worked out. And looking back on it, you know, when we were together, I realized, like, wow, that really synchronized and manifested through, you know, that law of attraction, that, you know, deep heartfelt desire. And I feel like what people should really consider in regards to the law of attraction is the rate or the higher vibration that you are, you know, contemplating or, you know, caring about certain things. That is going to, you know, give a higher rate of that, you know, manifest the results, or, you know, what you're looking for, or, you know, even, you know, that's why as a collective consciousness, you know, these global meditations work pretty damn well.
But the more I learned about science, it kind of all curved around. So you feel like science and religion, they diverge, but they actually come back together again the further you go out. And when I read, for example, about the Solvay Convention, and you might have heard of this, um, sometime, I think it was between the First and the Second World War, or after the Second World War, all of these scientists, the greatest minds on earth when it comes to physics, they came together in Norway to discuss this problem that they had noticed, where whenever they tried to conduct experiments, they noticed that the experiments wouldn't happen the same if they weren't in the room, if they weren't looking at it. They were certain that just the act of observation was throwing off their experiments and giving them the wrong results.
Yeah.
And so they all came together to talk about this, like how can we address this? What's going on here? I think like great minds like Heisenberg were there, and after this convention, it actually became the norm for science when we're thinking about like, the Large Hadron Collider, and like, you know, we're
Yeah,
talking about
the
nuclear fusion.
Copenhagen interpretation.
Yeah, yes, for we now conduct those experiments in a room with no people, far away. We're actually trying to not observe it, because we know that when we're looking at it, something else is happening. And that's kind of the where we get to the quantum physics, the you know, how the smallest of the smallest particles behave. We keep zooming in, like what are the protons and the neutrons made up out of? And we know that there's little things called quarks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Like, well, they're quarks. Okay, cool. They don't really behave properly, right? Same like electrons. They seem to have the ability to teleport. They seem to have the ability to get entangled with each other. So it doesn't matter how much distance you put between two particles that have become entangled. If you do something to one, it's going to happen to the other. It doesn't matter if you put the second particle on Mars, basically. Mm-hmm. We're not scientifically trained. And so my wife works in medicine, and she works with other doctors. And, you know, we give medicine, and we give modern medicine, and doctors, we give them a bad rep. And we think that when scientists discover these things that we're talking about, that they might freak out because it goes against their understanding. It's not necessarily the case.
No.
And especially not within medicine. Like medicine, you might feel like, oh, people are just throwing all spiritual things under the column of the placebo effect. But I can tell you that within the medical field, doctors understand that there's a lot of things we don't know. and we understand that our thinking has a massive impact on our body's healing capabilities. And so there's more going on there, where if you're a real scientist, you'll accept the fact that you just don't understand. And
Yeah.
you're not gonna, that's
Yeah, but
really
still,
my
that
experience.
that was
You
still
got-
like you want to inquire, like learning more about it. Like that's the humble. Like a scientist is actually a mystic as well. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Common Underground podcast. I'm your host Jasper, and today I'm in Barcelona, and I'm recording from here. I'm traveling through Barcelona right now. It's a little bit difficult with the whole situation, but it goes well. Just in my favor because probably gonna change the laws here, but that's more of a current thing. Today I'm joined by my co-host Tjeerd de Wit. He is back in the Netherlands right now, right? In our hometown where I grew up.
Hometown.
You as well. And I'm also joined by Derek Bartoloselli. I say it correctly, right?
yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Bye.
Yeah, guys, I think our viewers are already familiar with you, Derek, and with Tjeerd. So, Derek, is there something you do want to add because of the previous podcast? It went like pretty straightly because of editing problems and recording problems. So maybe you can give a little introduction so people are a little bit familiar with your work and what you're doing.
Okay, yeah, sure. And yeah, thank you so much again for having me on once again, my friend. Cheers. And yeah, glad you're doing well in Barcelona. Still chilling out in the south of France, La Ciotat. What are we, the 22nd of November, 7 p.m. Going well, my friend. So yeah, first time you had me on, that was cool. It was still kind of getting used to the whole podcast, talking to into a headphones, a microphone, and in front of a computer. But so basically, what I've been doing for the past 8 years on my awakened journey, if you will, is using the medium of music and video, and also audio recordings of people that I've listened to throughout the years, and weave that into a tapestry that I've created. I got over 100 videos on YouTube, and yeah, all relative towards higher levels of awareness, consciousness, getting into occult, esoteric, spiritual aspects, even health related, the whole gamut of a lot of the topics that one is going to come across, tumbling down the rabbit hole, or kind of excavating, if you will. And since we're going to be talking about the New Age movement today.
Yeah, this is the subject of today, is the New Age beliefs. So we're going to look at what are some of these beliefs, what are the influence, like what is the New Age movement as a whole, because people probably have different views on it. It might include some things, might exclude some things that people think about. I know that it's pretty popular. People know about New Age. It's pretty, like, if you talk about crystals or you talk about hippies, then people will know that the New Age movement is present there. But I don't know really. I think a lot of people still don't know what it's completely about. I have to be honest, I did some research on it, but you can always learn more things, because sometimes I think about something and it's like, oh yeah, that comes from like the New Age movement. So like what you mentioned, Derek, that you use your music through like the whole journey that you go through, like researching all these things. When I was 17, I came across like spirituality, which I was interested in. But I came across all these gurus on YouTube, and I'm not gonna mention any names or like people that looked like spiritual, but they like made a certain uh, like they glorify certain aspects like positivity. They might talk about the shadow integration, but as far as how far is it Jungian, how far do they even know like the science of it, or is it just something that they use? They use a lot of quantum mechanics, but there's a lot of things that that is included within the New Age movement. Um, but I think overall that a lot of New Age influence comes first of all from the hippie movement and from the Eastern religions. So, Tjeerd, what do you think? What is your familiarity with like the New Age movement or like hippies, like because we're all like spiritual and people will associate it with that. So what do you think?
Well, for me, it has always been something that I've felt like I was observing at a distance. And even though I might feel attracted to certain New Age ideas, um, I've always been kind of repelled by the black and white nature of New Age thinking. And so, what I mean by that is that I like to consider possibilities, but I feel like a lot of people, they take New Age thinking to a point where they are right. And if you don't agree with them, you're you're just not awakened enough, or your pineal gland is calcified and you're just not vibrating
Yeah.
at at the same level.
Yeah.
And so it is very condescending to me,
Mm.
and it also kind of it's a kind of snobbery. It is very revealing because it's actually showing stupidity.
Mm.
A lot of people, like there's this saying, and I'm sorry that I don't know who originally said this, but I've always felt it resonated with me. Some people, the more books they read, the less they feel they actually know. And then you have a certain type of people who only needs to read one book and they feel like they know absolutely everything.
Mm.
And so this is kind of what happens with New Age thinking to me. So I adore and I respect a lot of the principles that go along with New Age thinking, but I also recognize our our own faults and our own tendency to just want to please our egos, and so I've always kind of observed it at a distance as a curiosity that might have some valuable things to offer when you approach it objectively with critical thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, when like I mean like the open-mindedness, I think you mean with like
Yeah.
being objective. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like it's always needs to be in balance. So you don't have any personal experience with it.
A lot, a lot.
Uh-huh.
I have a few crystals here in my room
Yeah. Okay.
that I picked them up on a holiday in Germany. Not really, no, not with a spiritual intention, but then um, I kind of got interested in crystals because they look wicked, and I was like, this is awesome, I love this, and I gave kind of like, what do you call that? I gave an essay, or I read an essay. I kind of created a presentation in middle school about crystals, and I remember I got into the science of it. I wanted to know why you can see through it, and so I learned about crystals in a scientific way. And then later on, like these people would pass through my life. It might have been a babysitter, or like a partner of a family member or something like that, that would talk about crystals and their potential for healing, for example, or
Mm.
their potential to store energy. And I thought it was fascinating, but I never really looked into it until I kind of had my own awakening moments and started having personal experiences that not really per se related to New Age, but my opinion on crystals, for example, as a subject on a whole, is like, yes, there is probably potential for crystals to be used in healing. However, probably nobody alive knows how to actually do that.
Mm.
That might have been lost to us. That might have been something that we knew once, maybe a long time ago, even before written history. But I think it's supremely arrogant to call yourself a healer and claim that you know how to use crystals to make really real problems go away.
Mm.
So yeah, I've definitely met people like that, and it was always kind of like looking for to engage people like that in kind of argument. But
Mm.
then later on, as I became more of a gray thinker,
What type of thinker?
I thought it more valuable just to listen to them. A gray thinker. So I like that. Um, I don't necessarily want to choose sides in this conversation because, like I said, I feel attracted to a lot of concepts that are integral to New Age thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in unity. I believe in manifestation. I believe in let's say like I believe in law of attraction, maybe even. However, I also believe that all those concepts are likely very misunderstood.
Yeah. So let's get into what are your, before we get in further into like what makes the New Age beliefs distinguished from like spirituality in a approach on an authentic level or a traditional way, because there's multiple streams. Like Derek, what are your thoughts on this whole New Age movement? What do you think? What makes the New Age, and why isn't it just spirituality?
It's funny. It's been referred to as like the cul-de-sac before like true spirituality, actually. And in French, actually, cul-de-sac, it's French word. I mean, cul-de-sac. Cul is the ass. De of sack bag. It's the ass of the bag.
Mm, mm.
Cul-de-sac, like on a street. I don't know if you guys know that word.
Oh yes, we have them here too.
You can't get, nowhere to go really. But basically, yeah, it's a trap, and it will derail people from truly evolving spiritually. And yeah, I think the basis of today's conversation is really to kind of identify some of the deceptive ways that the New Age movement kind of keys people into certain concepts and ways of thinking and even speaking,
Mm.
So
What are some of these concepts? Let's go a little bit more specifically on what the New Age is, because like one of the things that I do think it is, it tries
yeah,
different spiritual traditions, like for example, mostly Eastern religions, and it draws from these religions and it creates a new religion. And with religion, you have the spiritual side, but then you also have the dogmatic side. So those are some things that I personally am bothered about in the New Age movement. Is that I've been like some of the encounters that I have with this movement is being in Peru. There's a small little town, Pisac. Had a very good time there. Met very interesting people, and some I had on this podcast as well. But there's a lot of New Age influence there. So they're like locally, the locals used to wear ponchos. They now no longer do because they're more adapting to our society than we to them. But the hippies, they all wear these ponchos. And I was still wearing normal clothes like what I now wear. And I walked around there, and still a lot of people didn't want to engage with me because they judged me like, oh, your clothes aren't bought holistically, like they could have been made in a factory in China. So you're not spiritual. So they already like create a group, and that's the same thing that I think happened with the hippie movement, where they became identifiable. Like being spiritual doesn't mean that you have to change your clothes. You don't have to walk differently. You don't even have to be differently. You just have to be what you already are, and that doesn't require meditation, doing yoga every morning, believing in the law of attraction. These things can all be in help, can be an extension, can you guide you in certain processes for sure. They sure have
yeah.
qualities.
About tapping into the soul, the pure soul essence, and those things, are going to come naturally, that true authentic self and, lifestyle and
Yeah.
the attitude of not really caring about fitting into any kind of genre category and, these you know, you can even call them cults because they have that kind of mentality in a sense, you know, and it falls into dialectics, you know, it's either this or that kind of, you know, so
Yeah. Yeah, another thing like was that they're like did mantra singing and like meditation, Buddhist meditation in Pisac in Peru. And I was there and I was more interested in the Andean cosmovision. So for me, like I can get like the benefits of it, but you're at a country which has its own spiritual tradition there. It's rooted in the climate there. You meet the locals, they're rooted in this tradition. But then you come there and you do Buddhist meditation, you do yoga, and I don't have anything against it, but it's like you see that all these new agers, they're all pulled by these Eastern philosophy, because I think one thing that it doesn't require is being able to handle complex ideas. Like in our society and mostly in Western thinking, we get influenced by a lot of different ideas. Like Hegel had certain ideas, so more the philosophical side. But this one is ignored. It's no, you have to quiet your mind. You have to sit in meditation. Your thoughts are your ego. So there's no value in it. So I think like for me overall, the New Age movement is very exclusive. Uh, it's very like it doesn't include everything. Like if you like if I would feel fear right now of this girl because of a certain thing, of course, like eventually you don't want to be totally in fear, but it doesn't mean like no, I'm feeling fear right now, I'm such a bad person, or I should just live positively. No, fear exists. It's fucked up, yes, but for some type of reason I do feel it. So why should I ignore my emotions? And I think this is where like they when I was in Pisac, I heard this term for the first time called spiritual bypassing. But they talk about this a lot there. And I think that happens there a lot as well. Like if you have a depression, here do some meditation, all will be well. But I don't know if the reality works like that. So you know, I
No.
don't want to make it too personal. Like I think, you know, all these people are beautiful people and they're all on their own journey. And some of my friends actually might have a lot of similar views, and I have these similar views as well. But one thing I do also find important is that you challenge your views, that you don't stick to a certain religion. That's why I didn't choose to be a Christian or any other faith, because I think, okay, all faiths, they all have their unique qualities where you can learn something from it for sure. But I do think like my ancestry and things that I already connected with, and I think Tjeerd, you sparked this for a very uh, sparked this flame as well, because like you stated the emphasis on our tradition and being a Frisian.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
controversial, but that's also a thing that they left out in the New Age movement. They don't really approach you as a person that has this ancestry and like, who are you? Let's work with you. I could suggest to make you meditate, but it's always has to be your own choice, and you have to work what the person is already at. Instead of having a uniformic way of doing things, like you have to do meditation, you have to do yoga, then you get stuck again, and that's the trap that Derek was talking about. Like,
yeah,
I
it's
think the trap, you can call it
sorry, go.
you can call it toxic positivity as well, because in the New Age movement, it's not uncommon to suppress all types of negative thinking, and negative thinking, you know, it just attracts negativity. So just ignore all of that. Uh, creates a problem, because we're supposed to experience all of our emotional ups and downs, to be a full, well-rounded human being. And I think the problem is that New Age is very much focused on these cure-alls. So like you said, if you're depressed, well, you should just meditate, you know? If you just meditate, it'll go away. Um, or you know what? If you're depressed, maybe you should do breath work, and breath work will make your problems go away. And so what happens is you create this atmosphere where you're basically discrediting something that could have real potential value to somebody, but you're kind of painting a picture that's unrealistic. And if you have authority to this person and they actually believe everything that you're telling them, you're only contributing to the problem because people stop thinking for themselves. And I think that's the biggest issue in the New Age movement is the lack of critical thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I just add on to what you
Yeah,
were
for
saying?
sure.
Because
Go ahead.
yeah, when and these things do work, you know, breath work and meditation and stuff, but it's really gonna solve like the symptoms. It's not gonna get to the causal factor of why that person is in that state of depression or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where people need to be at in the realm of causality to understand what caused their dis-ease of whatever is got them going. Of course, you know, meditation is going to help center and balance because that's what it does. One's thoughts and emotions, if they're doing it right, you know. There's so many different ways you can meditate. And it's funny because there's this whole stigma of you got to be in the lotus position with their hands like this and blah, blah, blah. Never really found much, you know, wasn't too attracted to that style, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not for everybody. I think the different, like, I've met so many people in my life that have told me meditation is not for me. I fall asleep, or it's boring. I like, it's not, it, like, I don't think it works for me. And people that are actually,
Oh, you're cutting
and I
away.
think,
Wow.
oh
Can you repeat
no,
it? Sorry.
yeah, absolutely. I think the problem is that a lot of people, um, they have this very one-sided view, like Derek described, of what it means to meditate. And if you can't sit in a lotus position, then you can't properly meditate. You know, it's also another way of exclusion, basically, because when people create this image, like, no, when you meditate, this is the position you take. Um, it excludes a lot of people. What if you don't have any freaking legs?
Ah,
Does that mean you can't meditate properly? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
we have to understand that we're all very unique,
Yeah.
and like Derek said, there's so many different types of meditation. There's meditation where you literally, like you encountered in Peru, where you chant a mantra, and then there's all these different types of mantras. But then you can also do visualization, where you intensely focus on like the flame of a candle, or you close your eyes and you imagine something in great detail, or you try to literally still your mind, which like Alan Watts said, is like trying to smooth rough water with a clothing iron. You're just going to create more wrinkles. So we have to we have to kind of find whatever works for us, and maybe your way to meditate might be ballet, or
absolutely.
or literally, or doing a long sprint, running a marathon. So people meditate in their own ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called getting into a meditative state, kind of just, you know, doing any kind of activity, you know, that people are passionate about. They can definitely tune into that, you know, frequency or, you know, state, if you will. Yeah, sorry, Jasper, you going to say something?
No, yeah, that's okay. But I think, like, to add to it, what you're saying, Krishnamurti said meditation is not like a certain part, certain steps of behavior. Like you set a limit for yourself. Okay, this is how I'm gonna meditate. Then you're already not doing it anymore because you're out of the meditative state. So you have to do it in the moment itself. So if you're like, okay, I need to sit in a certain position, then you're already creating a habit, and through that habit, you trying to go beyond methods, beyond habits. I mean, sorry, but you know, I don't think it works like that. It's like meditation, like you said, it's a certain state, a certain awareness that you have during your life. Um, yeah, and I think like the New Age movement is actually like, and I researched this a little bit beforehand, but it's a reaction to spirit, no, not spirituality, to religion, to Christianity, because like also it uses a lot of Eastern religions because they had this assumption, okay, there isn't any value anymore in the Western religion, so we're gonna look at the East where everything is like, oh, tropical trees and nice like tropical climate, people are very nice, very open, like they do have some form of esoteric Buddhism and some esotericism there as well, but overall it's much more open, much more readily accessible. But the first person that went there was called Helena Blavatsky, and she started the Theosophical Society, and she was actually like trying to escape her marriage to go on a spiritual quest, and she dressed herself as a man and took like a lot of courage. She was the first, one of the first people that she did something like that, all the way from Russia. She walked there. It's a real pilgrimage. Like this is what I call authentic spirituality, and people have a lot of things to say against her. But I do think like, and she warned actually about the New Age movement. She said
Yeah, I
like,
was gonna say yes, man.
yeah, say that because like I don't exactly remember what she said. Maybe you do.
Yeah, yeah, likewise, yeah. But she definitely foresaw it in the future, that this was going to be something to come, and it's going to overthrow, people's trajectory towards, real self-actualization, activation, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have the conception that you have to go to India to become spiritual, or to any country, then you're already losing
already
it.
lost. Yeah. For those people, spirituality kind of becomes a band-aid for no, like we were just addressing, you're kind of addressing symptoms, but not the cause of your problems.
Mm.
And even though the Eastern philosophies, the Eastern traditions, or religion, dogma that has been brought over into the New Age world, kind of gets transformed into some type of abomination. I do feel like there's a lot to be learned from Taoism, Buddhism, but I have to remember it remains an ism, and you always got to be careful of those isms.
Every ism creates a schism, like
Yep.
like they say in hip hop. Yeah, but
Wait, say it again?
every ism creates a schism. So
Yeah,
it's like they create a spit. But I think like these Eastern religions definitely hold a lot of value, but the New Age movement, they decontextualize it. So they bring it here to the West and then expect that it doesn't have any consequence on our whole development. Like, of course, it can be useful, but you should look. This is my philosophical take, but I do think that there should first be an establishment looking back into your own past and knowing from where you came, like the roots, like studying your family lines, and also of course people say, yeah, but you came from the source, but there's multiple layers. Like it isn't the either or the other, it's both and there's multiple layers. Like you can say everything is an illusion, for example, which is very like they say often in the spiritual tradition, or I mean in the New Age movement, but it isn't like that, It's very different.
It's a very real illusion, if it, I guess, that we're living in. It's illusory in the form that we attach our own ideas onto the world, and so we're always filtering what we see through this prism in our mind, which, yeah, I guess does create an illusion, or maybe even a hallucination of what the world truly is.
What I was meant to say, like the illusion, it is an illusion, but it is certain at a certain level. Like it's not like if you say like everything is illusion, so we should just stay at home and like don't engage with life anymore, then that is another New Age concept.
And all that shit, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the problem is that in this illusion, we tend to confuse our symbols for things with the things themselves. Yeah. And so when we think about concepts like wealth, a symbol for wealth is money. And so we think money is wealth, but I think we're making a mistake there. We have to be more nuanced.
Yeah. And another thing that's kind of dangerous, the New Age notion of, oh, it's just an illusion. It's kind of like it leads to people thinking like, well, nothing here in this incarnation matters. Nothing that we're doing on Earth really matters in the physical. It's all more spiritual. A little too.
There's some. Sorry, Tjeerd, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's another form of this snobbery, where I was like, no, you just don't get it because you're not at my level.
You heard the term a spiritual narcissist?
No, but I feel like that's very, very accurate for describing a lot of people I've met in my life. Uh, no, these people, they all have some great ideas, but what makes them wrong is the fact that they are convinced of them.
Yeah. I like I some of these ideas I like I can if I pick out something is that they say and that's a lot of like if we really go into and we really be honest, then we probably took on some of these views as well. So one of these views that I took on for a very long time and partially still do is that giving service to others. That's what it's all about. I said it in previous podcast, but it only works in a certain context. But in the like, if I say service to others, then I already make a distinction between others and myself. So the service to others should include yourself. So you shouldn't make the distinction. Even if you do, you should not forget that you need something as well. Like the most important person is eventually yourself. Like even if you
Yeah,
want to reach other people and you find them important, you do it through yourself, using your own body as your tool to move around and interact with people. So
So
that's just
by
very
that logic, your service to self is simultaneously service to all.
yeah, yeah, but it doesn't mean that you have to accept every behavior. That's not what it said. But I think therefore a distinction is reasonable and it should be there. But I do think that if we're just um, you know we do the either but not the other, then we still have the same problem. We should include ourselves with it. So it's not the same thing. It's not like I'm giving service to others. So uh, I help out myself. It doesn't matter what my behavior is. It's more that you have an intention to like provide, I don't know, like food for everyone else, but you eat from it
yeah, you
yourself
got
as
open
well.
arms to give a helping hand for sure.
Yeah,
But I think this notion, it's kind of, I feel like when people come to this understanding, it's already kind of assumed that people have their house in order or their shit together,
yeah,
or they've been service to self enough that, they can be of service to others in a good way. But what,
yeah.
is kind of left out is, service to truth as well.
Mm.
What's up with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, that's a very important point. Yeah, service
There's
to the
been
whole.
a full-on onslaught on the truth 24/7 for eons. What the hell?
Yeah, yeah.
That's some
Yeah, there
love.
needs to be a battle for that as well because that isn't spread readily. I notice when interacting with people, like a lot of it spreads through academia, and people hold a certain attitude. And I'm not putting towards anyone personally, but some people have certain attitudes that they are not really open to new ideas anymore because and that touches on what Bill Hicks always said, like it's a choice between fear and love. Like either you're at the closed state, you just want to reaffirm your own beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't want to listen to something that challenges something you don't want to hear. And I think a lot of spiritual growth actually comes from things you don't want to hear, and like these are pretty painful to the ears, but actually they serve you at a long term. And that's why like a lot of spirituality is also like long term thinking, or like what I do. I play chess against myself. This is not a spiritual practice in the way that you can find on the internet, but I use it as a spiritual tool because it helps me to become unbiased. I play from both sides. I just check what the best move is, and
Yeah,
it helps
nice.
me to stay objective. It doesn't matter for me who wins because it's both me. So I think why isn't that a spiritual practice within itself? Like if it helps you balancing out your brains, then where do I
Yeah,
need to sit on another decision? Like
it's a personal thing, and I like I really respect that because that kind of stuff is really important. I would advise not to bring that up at any first dates, but I would I would say that truth uh, does not need you to defend it. A lot of people, when they discover things that they feel like, no, this is my truth, they start to cherish it. But they feel like if they would share it, it could get damaged, and their worldview gets confused with truth. And in my opinion, I feel like truth is like a lion. You know, when you set it free, it'll roar, it'll rip through everything. Real truth is like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But when you have this worldview that actually cannot be damaged, because if it would be damaged, then you wouldn't really know who you are anymore, and that's probably not truth.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I used to think like that. You know, the lion. You know, truth being the roaring lion and everything. But yeah, truth doesn't really speak for itself. We have to be the conveyors of truth because.
Oh yeah, yeah. You have to be the lion.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we are the lions. Let
Lion
it
of Zion.
those roars rip. You know.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think it's very important for us to kind of like act on this responsibility. You know, if you feel like you've discovered some truth, then wouldn't you want to share that? Wouldn't you want to yell it off the rooftops? A lot of the times it might not be that way because you know that a lot of people don't agree.
Hmm.
And it's so much easier to go through life not disagreeing with anybody. Uh,
Yeah.
There's the
it's the truth.
bypassing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll avoid a lot of conversations because
Hmm.
nobody really likes conflict.
No.
Nobody really takes
Concentration.
responsibility defending their truths.
Yeah.
And then you have to be careful because when you do, you have to still remain open-minded. If you defend your truth, but then you close your ears to any opposition, you have become your own.
Oh
It's
no.
always nice to go into conversations with
You have to
people.
become your own what?
Um,
You cut off a little bit.
oh, I said you gotta be careful because you become your own enemy if you start closing your eyes to other eyes and ears to other opinions, other ideas,
Hmm.
and so that's I guess that's a problem with New Age is you're so convinced of your truth that nobody can change it. But the problem is then you are unable to listen to anybody or learn anything new.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And to bring up another critical point, I think New Age is actually a lot about look within. They always say like look for the truth within. And this is another like philosophical thing I talked about. Like, don't you then already make a distinction and create dualism? Why is the outer world excluded? Like, if you have the right relationship, you know that the external world isn't what it appears to be, then I can still engage with this reality, and still it will be something like I think we are here for a reason. It's not just to discard it. No, we have to play with it. We have to create something new, like form what is there, and then it's like that's why we're co-creators. But if we excluded that, just look like, of course, it's important to look within, but it's just as important just to look without. But it's not contrasting in the sense that you only do one. You only look outside or you only look inside. Because I think like a lot of people that are into spiritual development are actually more introverted because they think a lot, and I am certainly, think a lot more about certain things that we engage from day to day with. So we're a lot more self-aware. But people who are more extroverted, more engaged with this reality, they are much more uncomfortable to look within. So if you're saying to them, look within, they might not just be ready for that. You can better say, oh man, they're a good breakdancer. Why do you love it so much, And then they question like, oh, why am I so engaged with this? What is it that I love? Oh, it's maybe the free movement. Is it the free expression? Something inside of myself that I want to express. Like for them, you don't have to say to them like you have to sit in a lotus position, because for them the meditation is the breakdancing or whatever it might be. So like I think it's more about being natural, like finding doing things that you already did, but just enhancing and appreciating it a lot more, and just becoming having this extra awareness of like, whoa man, look at how far I came, like being grateful for the progress you already made, but at the same time also be your inner critic. So it I think it's like spirituality isn't there. To sum it up, I would say like it's crucial to simplify, but not oversimplify. And I think a lot of New Age movement, they oversimplify. So it's not as easy to say,
Sometimes they over mystify as well, so, you know.
yeah, yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
It's not as easy as saying like just look within or just do this. I wish it was like that. Then you know you could just listen to some. You just had the right to know the right person. Just keep your ear like this, and oh, I know it now. You know, but it actually involves a lot of implementing ideas. And I think like this is where revelations really show themselves because I find it very, and you both are active researchers as well, but a lot of people they don't have really this time or the energy or whatever the reason might be, and some would say I've met some people here who said no, you're just privileged, you're from the West, like, and I don't say, you know, people in India and like they don't research, like, oh, what a bad people. That's just, you know, ad hominem, like people attack my standpoint, but I think it's crucial that we, okay, maybe it's a privilege, but we're using this privilege for better serving thing. And one of these things is the value of research is that you found something, but you don't immediately believe it. Like some things I know in the internet I've definitely discerned through, but and I think like fidelity for being able to validate is very important. So you apply it into your life. Like I was wearing a mask here in Spain, like they pretty, you know, they pretty believe in, most of them believe in that stuff. So in a tram, like everyone mask, but, and sometimes I do it like this, you know, I'm such a dangerous person, but then you see other people acting the same way, like, oh, he does his mouth like this, okay, and I can do it as well. So people, there's a lot of people already on the same wavelength, but because we're so conformist in how we evolved as a human species, we always evolved in groups, that, you know, we always find safety in the group, and through that we lose this spirituality, which like groups shouldn't be excluded. Again, like there's nothing wrong with groups, but it has to be balanced with knowing yourself first good enough, and then you can implement your self-knowledge into the group, and you can see things like where there's bad at. But the tricky thing is like you cannot say everything like openly, oh, you're dealing with this, you're dealing with that, you should check this. No, real work is pointed like towards yourself first, and then you can set the example. And if people notice that, you know, they can come to you, because I think a lot of spirituality, like well, if I talk about someone with spirituality, I have more like, I hope they don't believe me, because I don't want to push them on a spiritual path, because like this stuff requires a lot of things that aren't comfortable. Like you have to deal with a lot of things that you might not want to deal with. You
Yeah,
have to be very fucking real against yourself. Like not everyone is ready for that. So why should you push on someone to do that? Like for example, I meditated with children um, when I was at a teacher assistant in a regular school. Thank God I got this opportunity. But I was meditating with these children, and there were some children who didn't really want to do it. So I said to them, like, you don't have to. Like, it's your own choice. If you don't want to meditate, that's up to you. Like, it's not something you have to force on anyone. It might benefit them, sure, but it should be their own choice. And they didn't, like, there were two that didn't, the rest did. And the ones that did, they were like, whoa, whoa, I saw this, I did that. And I don't know if it was, or some of these things are actually true or they're actually seeing it, or children that just have an active imagination and it's more for themselves, you know. But the other kids that were sitting on the side, they were like, no, actually the second time I also want to try, but yeah, because of time limit he couldn't. But one of these kids is actually following me right now, who wasn't meditating. He follows me now on the podcast. So and I'm not gonna mention names, but good. Like I'm very honored that someone made like a switch like that, who at first isn't comfortable in like engaging with that, and it's all to them. Like not everyone is at that stage yet, and we should respect that. But if you like dogmatize and make everything the same for everyone else, then what are you doing? You're commercializing, you know, like buy this crystal and it will help you sleep better. Like what the fuck, man? Like isn't this the same old thing like we already got pushed into?
community
So
package is getting watered down, and it's getting commercialized, and it's losing that sacredness for sure. Yeah, yeah. There are
yeah.
definitely benefits for crystals as well, but yeah, the
Mhm.
commercialization of crystals and how they're extracted from the earth is really bad, and it, you know, crystals in itself, they're like the nervous system of the earth, and they're a great tool to use. People should not use them as a crutch, or have to worry about, I always got to leave the house with a couple crystals in the pocket. I
It's
used to be like that.
spiritual materialism.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the same thing goes with like astrology, which I regard as a science in itself. Like we cannot talk in this podcast right now onto that in this first part for sure, because like it's a very grand subject, and a lot of New Agers, they tap certain ideas. Like I met people that I sat down with, and they didn't like, they probably knew my name just 10 seconds ago, and they already asked like, oh, what sign are you? And then they read your entire thing, and like, dude, I'm sitting next to you. What do you need that screen for? Like, sure, you can do extra research into like who I am as a person like afterwards, but first talk to me first, and then you can grab
Yeah.
these tools and you can deepen the relationship. Sure, it's a useful tool, but if you like that, for me that's already a barrier. Like you need a certain interpretation of what I could be like. Like, isn't that just insecurity, or are people
Mhm.
just bypassing with something with that? But everyone is at their own journey, so I'm not like, you can, Ram Dass always said this, you can judge people's people's behavior, but they cannot judge them who they are. And like, I don't judge them as they are, like, okay, you're such a bad person because you're a new age or whatever. Like, they're on their own journey, it's all good. But there are some things that come as a consequence by using these tools in this way. Like, that's I think a very deep problem that goes very beyond just the new age movement, but we didn't like the trivium where we don't get. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the trivium quadrivium. We never got learned to teach ourselves, and through that we have to figure things out by ourselves. But that's the whole difficulty on the internet. There's so much stuff out there, and the same thing applies with this new age, uh,
Yeah, it's
that
very
you grab a
appealing.
lot
It's
of.
all shiny and look at the colors and all this
Yeah,
stuff.
it's like you're in a
Yeah, for
candy
sure.
store, like everything is sweet, everything is great. But I think like, and
Spiritual
that's
bliss,
why
man. Get some.
yeah,
It's
and
a
I know.
big problem within the new age. I think, I don't know if any of you guys saw this documentary that came out recently on Netflix, and it was called The Social Dilemma. And aside
Heard
from
about it.
all
I
the
wanted to see
others,
that.
Heard about it too,
yes,
yeah.
I highly recommend it because it
Okay.
contains a lot of valuable information about the world we live in today and how algorithms control our experience online. And uh, algorithms, they kind of are designed to get you to pay more attention to whether it's YouTube, whether it's Instagram. They win, it's a win for them if you spend a few extra minutes or a few extra seconds scrolling on those websites. That's how they make their money, is through your attention. And so these algorithms have learned to show you things that you are more likely to click on. And more likely to click on means you have a strong reaction to it emotionally. And so what happens is you go down these rabbit holes where you might click on one skeptical COVID video, which might be very, very realistic what's being discussed there, but then literally 3 or 4 clicks later through the related videos, you're talking about flat earthers, or you're talking about reptiles that live in the underground world. With the new age, I think that this contributes heavily as well. And so people get shown more and more every time they go online of the same things that seem to confirm what they already believe. And so everybody ends up in a bubble.
Yeah.
And it's an
Or the
information
eco
bubble. Yeah, that's really dangerous because it creates a polarization where everybody that disagrees with you, they must be stupid, because each time you go online, everybody seems to be in agreement with you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how could you be wrong? Because all of your online friends, all of the people you look up to online, they say the same things as you. But then you go out in the real world, and then everybody is able to question those things, and it kind of is
Yeah,
off-putting. So
that's
that's
what
the
I've noticed. Yeah.
problem with New Age as well. It's the polarization
Fuck.
that takes
No, but
place through people's online experience.
to be more critical, I think it also applies to the conspiracy movement. To be honest, like I don't consider myself anymore to be a conspiracy theorist because I like a lot of views that I have right now. Don't consider to be conspiriential in how they are presented. I think a lot of things that happen in our society um has a double-sided effect. Like government can form a certain structure, but it can also be tyrannical. So like I coined this term, conspiranoid, is where you're a conspiracy theorist, but you're on a paranoid side. So you're more like fearful by it and not empowered. Like of course there are some conspiracy theories, and my spiritual teacher always said like the ultimate conspiracy theory is actually not a theory, but it's in yourself. That's your ego about trying to hold you back, and that this ego works with other people and it becomes like a grid, and this is what people call the matrix, you know, like at least there's I think multiple forms of the matrix, but the societal matrix is definitely because of this grid system. But there's, and you can see it within Gnosticism, like ontological, like in reality itself, probably the same thing happens. But I do think like we should be able to question our own viewpoints. So if I say I'm a conspiracy theorist, that will mean that I will reach only a certain percentage of the population that has similar views. But if I call myself just an investigator, then I'm open to whatever is presented to me. Like some things, yes, they're conspiracy theories, but other things they say it's a hoax and it actually isn't a hoax. But I make the discernment for myself and I don't associate with what I believe. At least I try to, in all honesty, you know, like it's not like I'm perfect. I'm not sitting on a chair with a crown. Like I'm not perfect or anything, but I try to challenge my views as much as possible. And that's also why I'm traveling. Like I did a lot of research, but now I'm meeting people and they don't share these views. But you know, it's more about can you find the right dialogue where you can talk um, with these people, even though they don't share your views, and still being
Yeah,
lovable
find the common
to
ground,
them.
right?
Yes, exactly. That's the whole vision of the podcast. Like, it's not like I can invite anyone that I want. Like, it's not. It could be friends. It could be people I've met. It could be someone with a PhD. It could be whoever. But there, like, I of course make some selection. But like everyone is be like everyone should like, and this is the thing about the podcast. Like, I eventually have to think about. Like it's not just an online platform for me. Like I do want to people, even if it isn't related with me, that people start a dialogue, because that's what it's all about, even though they might not follow my channel anymore. If I just spark this, that they have an open dialogue, and it's especially difficult with your family because they see you in an old way where you're already like, oh, you're that kid that I grew up that I looked after, and now you're saying these things. So there's already like bias attached to it. So that makes the dialogue more difficult. But that's something that I think is something that the problem what you presented with all this algorithm is true dialogue is like, oh, even though someone has an other algorithm which information got presented, then we can still share these different views, we can contrast it. And I think like another key point is validation and responsibility. The feeling of responsibility is not just including, okay, I believe what society says of me, but it also doesn't include just doing research. Haven't done enough research, but the next thing is to validate what you believe. And not everything that we research can be easily validated. Like if you believe something in Atlantis or whatever, like these things that I'm interested in as well. But it's lots more difficult because it's such in the past. But a lot of things I think, what especially about spirituality, but also the past is related to the present and the future also. So it entices all in the same point.
Always.
But still, it's much easier to get into spirituality in this present moment than doing it while you're doing research on archaeology or something, you know, like there's more things we have to process through. So is there anything, Derek, you want to say to that, or Tjeerd?
Uh,
I think archaeology is an interesting example because growing up, it was actually the first career I had envisioned for myself. You know, I was like, I'm gonna be an archaeologist. I'm gonna dig up a T-Rex. And as I grew older and I kind of learned that being an archaeologist is mostly just like, you know, brushing dirt away with a toothbrush. And then like I got a little disillusioned, or like I lost my passion for that idea. Uh, Always, however, remaining interested in the the results of archaeology, but archaeology itself is problematic because it kind of poses as a science, even though it is pure dogma. You know, these people, they dig things up and then they come up with a theory, but it always remains just that, because all they can do is a little bit of carbon dating. But most archaeologists will probably try and just fit in the academic world, you know, get some success, get write something that gets published, gets accepted, gets peer reviewed. And so the problem is as an archaeologist, when you discover something does not fit in with the pre-painted image that all of the previous archaeologists have established,
the
you know,
scientists.
it's either, yeah, it either gets tossed out, it gets ignored, it gets buried, whatever. I think that's a problem with archaeology. So interesting that you use that as an example. But yeah, it's spirituality. There's definitely a link there, because you're trying to approach something with an open mind, but then you end up coming out with all these preconceived ideas that I'm like left to think at the end of it, our egos must have had some influence there, where we have this great impulse to try and learn, and understand, but then the ego takes over, and it's like, no, you don't have to understand, you don't have to learn, because you know.
And society's brainwashing programming before that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like the new age movement itself, they don't want to really dig into the books, and they look into like traditions. So that's why I use the analogy as well of the archaeologist looks at the past to looking at stones, for example. But the new age movement, they look at reminiscence of Buddhism, and they apply it to our modern society. So it's something like, of course, it has certain value. You shouldn't stop engaging with that or researching into that, but doesn't, like, for me, the real spirituality, like all these things can still be valuable, but the real spirituality is right here, right now, what you have inside. And it doesn't require you really to read books, but it can be helpful to read books. And I see much benefit from reading books or doing research on YouTube. Well, now it's getting more difficult, like you said, but I think like it's like you're making a soup or a meal. I always use this metaphor. Right? You're using all these different eating ingredients, and if I make a soup or someone else makes a soup, it's not the same thing. Like you might still use the same recipes, even if you do that. There's still like the way you process the whole thing you go through. Like you might cook it 5 minutes longer, or you stirred it a little bit more, or the way you ordered it in. Like there's so many varieties. So it is for everyone. Everyone puts their own spirit into it, and I think that is real spirituality. It's not subtracting from an existing religion. Like you can use those things as a stepping stone, but real spirituality is actually just going into nature or taking a walk or talking with people or uh, all these things that we regularly do already, but we don't have maybe not the same awareness with like, okay, contrasting it to what does it serve the whole, what does it serve truth, you know, like not just this conversation, we're just having a good conversation. No, this conversation has a ripple effect, you know, it leads to other things. and these things affect eventually the grand scale of everything. So in every moment we should be a little bit like conscious in that we make the right actions, and even if we don't, it's part of our growth, maybe poetically said. But I don't know, viewers, what you guys think about what is this whole New Age movement? Let me know in the comments, and we can take a 5-minute break, and we maybe like if you guys want to, we can talk about law of attraction, which is one of the things which comes out from the New Age movement as well. But I think there's some truth in that, and there are some things we have to get out of the bag. But it's a very interesting thing, and I think a lot of people are attracted to that. It's just a natural what comes after discussing the New Age movement. So maybe you guys are open to that. Let me know.
Yeah, I'm open to that.
Yeah, all right. I'll see you guys in a bit.
This is the Ancient of Days, I am the image of Yah. He is the I am that I am, Elohim Moshe's Ra. This is the Atik Yomim, I am the Adam of Yah. He is the Aya Asher Aya, Hashem Fire, let us Yad. Hey Vad, hey, divine tetragrammaton, the left to tap. He is the Abba of Mashiach, I am lineage of Abraham. Right hands of the Chemas where his pillar stands. Planted your heart in your side of familiar sand. Sephiroth 10, 22 pillars extend to 72 names. Wise men scribe with pens, lay you Wesh, Yaakov and Yosef, fire and flame. He is the Messiah Torah, I am Obadiah's name. Do you get the picture, or do you only see the frame? A broken down prophet who raps regardless of game. Holla a name, but not or sons of Zadok again. He is Melech and Melchah, Amina Avinach 7th ray. He is the El Shaddai, eternal I ever Shalom. I am the generations of man engraved upon stone. I am the generations of man engraved upon stone. Who am I? I'm not the name or the form. Who am I? I've never died or been born. Who am I? Not the chariot of 5 horses. Who am I? Not the marriages or divorces. Who am I? Not the ashes or the corpses. Who am I? Not the actions or the courses. Who am I? I'm not the body or the mind. Who am I? And if you seek, you will find. Who am I? I'm not the name or the form. Who am I? I've never died or been born. Who am I? Not the chariot of 5 horses. Who am I? Not the marriages or divorces. Who am I? Not the ashes or the corpses. Who am I? Not the actions or the courses. Who am I? I'm not the body or the mind. Who am I? And if you seek, you will find. This is the Ancient of Days, I am the image of Yah. He is the I am that I am, Elohim Moshe's Ra. This is the Atik Yomim, I am the Adam of Yah. He is the Aya Asher Aya, Hashem Fire, let us Yad. Hey Vad, hey, divine tetragrammaton, the left to tab. He is the Abba of Mashiach, I am lineage of Abraham. Right hands of the Chemas where his pillar stands. Planted your heart in your side of familiar sand. Sephiroth 10, 22 pillars extend to 72 names. Wise men scribe with pens, lay you Wesh, Yaakov and Yosef, fire and flame. He is the Messiah Torah, I am Obadiah's name. Do you get the picture, or do you only see the frame? A broken down prophet who raps regardless of game. Holla a name, but not or sons of Zadok again. He is Melech and Melchah, Amina Avinach 7th ray. He is the El Shaddai, eternal I ever Shalom. I am the generations of man engraved upon stone. I am the generations of man engraved upon stone. Who am I? I'm not the name or the form. Who am I? I've never died or been born. Who am I? Not the chariot of 5 horses. Who am I? Not the marriages or divorces. Who am I? Not the ashes or the corpses. Who am I? Not the actions or the courses. Who am I? I'm not the body or the mind. Who am I? And if you seek, you will find. Who am I? I'm not the name or the form. Who am I? I've never died or been born. Who am I? Not the chariot of 5 horses. Who am I? Not the marriages or divorces. Who am I? Not the ashes or the corpses. Who am I? Not the actions or the courses. Who am I? I'm not the body or the mind. Who am I? And if you seek, you will find. Who am I?
Alright, welcome back everyone. Let's do the second part. In this part, we're going to talk about law of attraction. So a lot of people mightn't be familiar with what the law of attraction is, but have different viewpoints on it. like many things, or other people might not even believe that it's real, or some people totally believe that everything in the law of attraction, like you can see, and there's the documentary on Netflix called The Secret, where they explain partially how, well, they say that wholly, but like everything is explained, but they, in my view, do it partially. Explain about what this law is, and there's a lot of misconceptions. But it's a very important thing, I think, and it could be a switch that you can press on and off, and like it might be just always on, but you might not even be conscious on it of it. But we don't really know how this whole thing works, but maybe we do. We can find out. Derek, what is your view on law of attractions? Do you have like some experiences where you can like tell people like this is like I probably can mention one, but do you have
Yeah, totally. I mean, like the real law of attraction is just, it's like cause and effect, more or less. It's a natural law. But like you mentioned, because I wanted to mention that as well, and I've saw that, and I was pretty wowed by it at the time because I didn't have the level of awareness, this and that, you know, the secret documentary, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's a watered down version of that, you know, natural law principle. At the same time, you know, they have a lot of emphasis towards, you know, financial gain. I don't know if you noticed that, but that's another pretty big indication of things that are, you know, wondering if it's new agey, this and that. Like, are they really talking about, oh, you know, create your abundance and, you know, money, and not even mention
That
you
stuff
know,
sells.
yeah,
Of course.
yeah, because it's the quick fix version. Like just press this button and just know this thing, and then things will manifest. Listen to these binaural beats. That's
Oh,
all the quick
goodness.
fixes, you know, and that's the same thing where whole the pharmaceutical industry is based upon. Some might work, but for the most part, they're all like, okay, I'm just using symptoms, or I'm trying to repress certain symptoms, and thereby I think it's completely fixed. But it doesn't work like that. It's healing is a long journey, and I think like the law of attraction, a lot of it, like you said, is based upon the ego. Like, I want something, I want to manifest this. But I think like real manifestation isn't really about yourself. It's more about what is actually needed as a whole, and you become a player in that. So you attract certain things that are relevant to what needs to be learned. Uh, but yeah, what do you think, Tjeerd, of this whole law of attraction?
Oh, well, I remember seeing that movie for the first time. I think I was with my mother ages, well, it feels like ages ago. I mean, we're very young here between all of us, so I feel like it's probably over 10 years ago, easily, that I saw this The Secret movie. And like you, Derek, I was very wowed at first. I was like, oh my goodness. And they're like, the reason why you're not getting the success you want, but all these one percenters are, is dot, you know. And that's why I was like, you know what, this is great, because like you said, it talks a lot about manifesting wealth, manifesting abundance for yourself. But later on, of course, in life, you realize like, well, that's literally why everybody bought that movie. And it's like, no, that's what sells, and that's what drives a lot of the commercialism behind the new age, is this self-enrichment and image building. But so I took a few concepts from that movie, and I have applied them every single day of my life up until this conversation we're having right now. And so, if I have to be honest, I can credit using the law of attraction for so many of my blessings. I've feel like I've lived a very blessed life, and ever since I left the Netherlands at like 18, I traveled all over the Caribbean. I lived in New York City, which is, of course, if you're from the Netherlands, that's wow, you know. I did a lot of things. I met the most beautiful woman in the world, and I actually got married to her, you know. A lot of beautiful things that I feel are partially due to me having a certain mindset that has to do with the law of attraction.
What
But
makes
there
you
is a
say,
big but. There's a
yeah,
big but. There's a pitfall, with this secret. And I think that the best way to describe it is pure victim blaming. So if you're born in the gutter in a third world country, for some reason you manifested that for yourself. If you're poor, you're manifesting that for yourself.
Yeah. Or have you heard this one? Like, oh, it's just like a past life karma. So, you know, it's just like, it's not anyone's fault. There's no culpability. You know, it's just, you know,
no culpability.
Play out. We don't have to kind of save them even. You know, it's just.
No, exactly. They're attracting all their own misery, everything bad that's happening. And it's really interesting, you know, because if these people were really spiritual, instead of talking about manifesting wealth or doing money affirmations, we would be manifesting an end to world hunger. We would be manifesting an end to global conflict, to all of that, like the suppression of women worldwide or people of certain religious groups. But it's really not about that. And no. I think that, like, I followed a few of these people because The Secret movie, it contains a lot of individuals. And nowadays, and in 2020, these people are called influencers, but they're all online entrepreneurs. They are these people that are trying to sell you something, and they'll say whatever they have to get you to buy.
I met a person like that in Pisac that said to me, you know, I got a company where we play a certain tone where you can manifest things through the source. And then I was like sitting with a girl, and she said, but you are the source, right? So you're getting it through the source, but you're already the source. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, you know, this sounds to me like a quick fix. But something that makes me think that law of attraction actually works is something that I've learned actually after doing DMT by the Buffalo Alfarius the second time. I was laying in my bed, and I was like struggling because I smoked some weed as well after the second time, because I finally could. And you know, these synchronicities, you get tested by the universe not to smoke, because before the session you cannot smoke weed. Now I got like tested by this universe, and once I could, and I was like, oh man, I met this guy and he had the best weed, and you know, I smoked a joint. But then I felt, okay, this smoking my weed is actually my ego coming back, because it's the habits that you've formed for such a long time that you're familiar to. So I had this, like with DMT, you have this complete honesty. It's such an honesty that you don't like, okay, do I actually want to know these things? But you don't have a choice. You get just presented to you. And I got this with weed, and then it was like, okay, wait, didn't I think about this when I was like, what would it be like? And this is the thing about the law of manifestation, which I think how it works. I asked the question, how would it be like if I started from scratch and like begin my new patterns again, like being reborn, because I had similar things in my dreams once. So I already like sparked this with my imagination, but this is another key. I didn't have any expectations that it would happen, that I would just, you know, experience these things. Now, I think the law of manifestation works at a philosophical level, where you have to ask questions, because if you don't ask questions, you know that this open state and you're not inviting things towards yourself. And I know gratitude is another key, but if you don't ask, and especially not the right questions, because philosophy is actually the art of asking the right questions, because you want to know really what's happening and applying that to your life. So if you're asking the right questions, then crazy shit happens. And I met a lot of people, and a lot of people I've invited here on this podcast through those means. But one outstanding incident was not just was when I was sitting in the lotus position, funnily enough. But I was sitting on the bus station on my skateboard, and I was waiting for the bus, and I was just closing my eyes, I was just appreciating the moment, and you know, I just skateboarded, so I feel really like skater's high. I feel very great. I'm very grateful, and I try to remind myself that I have to be grateful for the things that I have, like being able to go to such a skate park and having a skateboard, all these things that you take for granted, right? So But the thing that happened was I was sitting there and I opened my eyes and I saw a dollar, like 50 euros, like a paper flying towards me. So they always have the saying like, yeah, money doesn't blow your way, but that actually happened to me once. So, and it's not like I thought about money at that moment. I want to manifest money, but I was just gratitude. I had this
You're
gratitude.
in a
I was
good
just
vibe,
open,
man. Yeah.
and this was my reward. But for me, it's not like, okay, now I am materialistic. Like I really was, I holding this 50 euro bill, like, okay, what am I gonna do with this? Gonna give it, like, it's a responsibility. I think that's how you have to receive it. Like you're honored that you get it, but it's also like, okay, the 50 euros, now I got it extra, like someone lose this money. So you also have to think about that. So how do you compensate with that? So I try to do investments, or I don't know actually what I did with the money. I probably bought some weed from it, which I did share it with my friends. But now I don't know actually what I did with the money precisely. But I do think that it is important that we really like being grateful, and that we receive these things in open state, instead of like having these expectations or these certain desires and just expecting that. And I think that is something like mentioned in the secret that you guys were referring to. I did see it, but very shortly. But I know that the things that I gathered from there, that all these things that I'm saying with like the imagination is certainly something that they know that is a part of manifesting something. Because yeah, if you want to manifest something, you have to create an image for yourself first, because how are you going to fool something if you haven't seen it yourself? But I do think like words and actually, if you go in the full depth, like manifesting something requires three things, and that is emotion, logic, and action. If you align these three things according to natural law, so that means that you're in reality, you're aligning your perception to what actually is, by feeling how you are, by knowing, like having the knowledge and not forgetting your own mind. And that's this my issue also with the new age, where you have to discard your thinking brain, and also the courage or the action to actually apply these things. Those will bring you everything that you want. But you know you get something, but you have to also bring something as an offer. So if you want to
Yeah.
manifest being a car, having a nice car, maybe you have to break your leg first. Will you still want to have that car? I don't know. Like some people prefer, okay, just let me know. I don't want the car anymore. So the universe is going to test you. How much do you want this thing? And you might not at the end even still want that thing, but all the lessons that you had during that, like, okay, maybe that car isn't that important anymore, but this whole journey I've been breaking my legs and having such pain, but during this pain I can also connect with others, so maybe that's something I should focus on more. And I
Yeah,
think
but the
that is
New
what
Agers are going to be like, no, you ain't got to break your legs. You can just meditate it into existence, and the new car is just going to come about. No
yeah,
worries, you know.
Yeah,
That's
I
one
think
of
that's the
the things.
problem with
Got
law of
to
attraction as
mindset.
well, right? It's like you think about it and then it happens. And
mm,
there's a step missing in between. Because if I remember it correctly, they talk about manifestation in a way where you decide for yourself, okay, this is what I want. You have to visualize it. So it has to become real. You have to see it in your head. And then you have to feel gratitude as if you have already received or achieved what you have visualized, and put yourself into the thought, into the thinking of already having it. Because if you say, I want a new car, I want this car, then what you're implying through your words is, I don't have this car. And so that's what you send out. So I thought that was interesting. I was like, yeah, if you talk about wanting things, it literally implies you don't have it. So you have to kind of reach a state of gratitude, like you mentioned, all the time. And so all these things are coming into your life that are just going to affirm your gratitude. And instead of focusing on these very particular things, you can focus on the on a feeling. I think that's a much more effective way of using the law of attraction, is putting yourself into this state of gratitude, which you can trick yourself. We all have things that we're grateful for, and if you just simply list those, keep the list on you, for example, you can go over them, and it's very easy to achieve that thinking state where you're thinking about all the things you're grateful for.
I don't completely agree with that, because I
No,
think, yeah, go
yeah, I think
ahead.
there's
You
a
want to
problem
explain?
with that as well, right?
Yeah.
I agree that there's a problem with that, because when you're waiting for the thing that you want to happen, they paint this image as if, like, this is the surface, you planted the seed, and the seed is about to burst through the surface. And so your manifestation is about to happen. But you get fed up with waiting. So you say, it's never going to happen. And just by saying that, all of the progress suddenly dissolved, and you have basically shot yourself in the foot. You have kind of stopped the manifestation. So it again is blaming you in a way that is problematic within the law of attraction thinking. And that's why I feel like we misunderstand this. You were going to say something about that as well? Like, we feel like we're getting this wrong, Jasper?
Yeah. Well, I think like the part of the self-deceiving, I have some troubles with. Like, what way? Like, I can get that you have to convince yourself that you're already there, sure, but that is what life is about. This conviction sometimes needs some external stimulation. Would be for me very much easier to manifest bliss if I am surrounded in the forest with all these beautiful trees, then I will be being stuck in traffic. So sure, you can maybe reach the same state at different spots, but doesn't mean that you should don't go into nature, because these things, there's always like for me, law of attraction is mostly just about engaging with life and being open to receive, but at the same time not focusing on the receiving end, but giving as well. And I think the law of attraction should not serve you, it should serve the whole. It should, like, you shouldn't focus on what you want, but what is actually needed in our society right now. So I always,
You have
like,
to,
when I did sorry, to finish my point.
can't cancel out the self as well, you know. I don't know. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
we're all
No, but
individuals. We all need to eat. We all need to shit. We all need to sleep. All that stuff, you know.
yeah,
So once we get
Yeah.
the, like we mentioned already before, obviously we want to be service to self and service to truth, but people got to get their shit in order first.
mm,
Now, how does one do that? Going back to natural law, first cosmic principle. It's all about your state of mind. And yeah, Jasper, of course, like you said, the trinity of consciousness, the heart, mind, guts, right?
yeah, yeah.
And the other
Sorry.
overlooked principle, Passio talks about it as well. Of course, the eighth lost principle, which is the generative principle, which is really that heart center, and that really generates things. It's the genesis of pretty much what you either want or need or desire, more or less, and what you care about as well.
Yes,
Like for
exactly.
me, just an example of how the first time, a significant impact in my life, meeting my then wife. Heartbroken and stuff, no luck with women. I literally cried out to the universe. I was weeping. I couldn't, remember a time where I wept so hard, just being such a hopeless romantic in a sense. I was like 22, 23 years old and stuff. And so, went through the whole stages of being hopeless, and then you kind of try to carve out the image, using the imagination, which is that, magic, that ideal woman that you want in your life, and she kind of came along. And what do we need to do? It doesn't just fall in your lap, you have to kind of make the effort to introduce yourself and yada yada. So that's the action part of it. You have to have the courage to step up and say hello. I was in France meeting a woman from Tahiti, in Italy at the time, and yeah, it worked out. And looking back on it, you know, when we were together, I realized like, wow, that really synchronized and manifested through, you know, that law of attraction, that, you know, deep heartfelt desire. And I feel like what people should really consider in regards to the law of attraction is the rate or the higher vibration that you are, you know, contemplating or, you know, caring about certain things. That is going to, you know, give a higher rate of that, you know, manifested results, or, you know, what you're looking for, you know, even, you know, that's why as a collective consciousness, you know, these global meditations work pretty damn well as well, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. If people is at a certain state, if they're like Buddhist monks and they go to cities, and the crime rate lowers. So for me, that this is like, for me, the interesting part of the law of attraction is when science investigates these things, because as how far can these things be measured? Because I think like for me it has a lot of value, and maybe one day science can actually, and there's already some scientific work being published on these matters. But for now, it's not, you know, just like when Charles Darwin put forward the evolution theory, he went in 25 years, also to gather more of the background knowledge and to really solidify, but also because people weren't ready to receive it yet. And I think the
Yeah.
I
same
think a
thing is
lot of the problem has to do with the fact that our science is only is only able to register the things that we perceive, and so
yeah,
something that is non-physical is very hard to kind of prove scientifically. But there are things that are going on, like you said. There's crime rates that can be studied, and I think every year in Thailand they have 1 million kids meditate at the same time. And for the next 2 days, the crime rate in the local region goes down at over 60%. And so there is a definite correlation that can be pointed towards, but it's very hard to quantify what's actually going on, and to measure it is a whole other thing.
yeah, but I think like the real work is also about that, like bridging science and spirituality together. Like these things, science doesn't exclude. Like for me, I personally believe in science and the power of science, not in scientism, but I do believe that science is a valuable method into becoming, aligning your perception to truth, like becoming unbiased. And our science is based upon the empirical basis, meaning that it has to go through the 5 senses and has to be reproducible to really solidify if something is real or not. But I think like, and there's like Jeffrey Misloff, a parapsychologist, but there's also the global brain project, if I remember, or the global mind project, where they have these computers with random generators. And during 9/11, they measured that these random generators had like similar patterns. So our consciousness seemed to be affecting these algorithms. So it's not like, okay, based upon these things, it's there, but like I think, and you would reach a lot more people, not just in the New Age community, but actually in reality, through applying science to all these spiritual things. Like it doesn't exclude it. Like just it is, sure, science has its limitations for sure, but like we
They're
said,
not
like
self-imposed. Like I don't think science puts up any walls for itself, and it's like, no, we don't go beyond here.
yeah,
It's just kind of part of my personal journey. Like growing up, I was brought up in Europe. I had semi-religious parentage, you know, on both sides of the family. They all have their own different versions of how they view God in a Christian sense. And I, at some point, decided, you know, that's not for me. I actually don't believe in this. I don't know when I made that decision, but I became what you would call a militant atheist. You know, I actually looked forward to opportunities to argue with people about God, because I felt like it was almost like a a sword fight. I could use argument. I could, and it was really satisfying for my ego. And I look back at it, that's the best way to describe it. It was amazing. I felt so smart. But the more I learned about science, it kind of all curved around. So you feel like science and religion, they diverge, but they actually come back together again the further you go out. And when I read, for example, about the Solvay Convention, and you might have heard of this, sometime, I think it was between the First and the Second World War, or after the Second World War, all of these scientists, the greatest minds on earth when it comes to physics, they came together in Norway to discuss this problem that they had noticed, where whenever they tried to conduct experiments, they noticed that the experiments wouldn't happen the same if they weren't in the room, if they weren't looking at it. They were certain that just the act of observation was throwing off their experiments and giving them the wrong results.
Yeah.
And so they all came together to talk about this, like how can we address this? What's going on here? I think like great minds like Heisenberg were there. And after this convention, it actually became the norm for science. We were thinking about like, the Large Hadron Collider and like,
Yeah, the Copenhagen interpretation.
Yeah, yes, we now conduct those experiments in a room with no people far away. We're actually trying to not observe it because we know that when we're looking at it, something else is happening. And that's kind of the where we get to the quantum physics, how the smallest of the smallest particles behave. We keep zooming in, like what are the protons and the neutrons made up out of? And we know that there's little things called quarks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, like they're quarks. Okay, cool. They don't really behave properly, right? Same like electrons. They seem to have the ability to teleport. They seem to have the ability to get entangled with each other. So it doesn't matter how much distance you put between two particles that have become entangled. If you do something to one, it's going to happen to the other. It doesn't matter if you put the second particle on Mars, basically.
Yeah, I think there's already a movement within scientific discovery called panpsychism, which is there's already a step towards this view that consciousness has an effect on matter, but it's still boxed in many ways, and of course that is the way of science. So it's never perfect, but it's always a continuing process. So that's why I think like science still holds a lot of value, and some things like you said are not like it's very subtle, like astral projection. It's another thing, but they did study like out of body experiences. And like there were some things that they gathered out of these experiments, but it's just, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with David Bohm. He put out some scientific studies on quantum mechanics and gathered his own interpretation out of the double split experiment, where they split these particles, and it's also what you're talking about. When you observe it, it changes the behavior. But if you're going to say that consciousness through that creates reality, then people in the scientific community, they would freak out, and that for good reasons, because that will change
the dogmatic belief systems.
If I could interject, like we feel like I feel like it's fair to say that the three of us are non-scientists. We might be researchers, but we're not scientifically trained, and so I my wife works in medicine. And she works with other doctors, and we give medicine, and we give modern medicine, and doctors, we give them a bad rep, and we think that when scientists discover these things that we're talking about, that they might freak out because it goes against their understanding. It's not necessarily the case.
No.
And especially not within medicine. Like medicine, you might feel like, oh, people are just throwing all spiritual things under the column of the placebo effect. But I can tell you that within the medical field, doctors understand that there's a lot of things we don't know. and we understand that our thinking has a massive impact on our body's healing capabilities. And so there's more going on there, where if you're a real scientist, you'll accept the fact that you just don't understand. And
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, but
that's
still,
really my experience.
that was
Yeah.
still like you want to inquire, like learning more about it. Like that's the humble. Like a scientist is actually a mystic as well. Like they have like Spinoza had like this, trying to discover the world is like discovering God. You know, like they don't see the separation. And there's a lot of different people like Goethe. He was a philosopher. He was a painter. He was a lot of different things. He was an architect. He created architecture. He did so many different things, but he was also a scientist. But he had a different approach than Newton did. Like Newton, he had a very sophisticated lab, and not everyone can afford such a lab, so not everyone can reproduce it. So it's already for a certain elite. And he developed certain theories on like color, gravity. But what Newton did, he believed that humans had an intimate relationship with what they studied. And if they studied something, they would transmute themselves as well. He was very like Masonic and alchemical in thought. And he knew that, you know, we're not separate from what we're studying. And like the same, like another beautiful example with like the bone, he drew more broader interpretation of the whole double split experiment, but this was not directed towards other scientists, though this was directed to people and how and this is also the foundation of my podcast, David Bohm and Krishnamurti, where they stress the importance of dialogue and of the observer. Because if you hold these away, you have certain standpoints, then you're already limiting yourself and you don't have these open dialogue anymore. And then it doesn't matter what particle you find or what gene is there. Like if you don't have a dialogue, then what is it all worth? Like you should, if you're not able to discuss all these matters and that they're not applicable, not just for scientists, but actually people that live from day to day. And what is this science actually? What is the function of it? Is it to create a nuclear bomb, like they did with the quantum discovery? Like it of course has like a positive side, but it also has a negative side. So science is always double-sided. Like people think that it is our, you know, in a modern society, we think in modernistic thinking, they think science is very beautiful and we did a lot of great things. And of course, there is some benefit. But in a postmodernic science, or the postmodernic movement, they reject science as a whole. They reject all traditions. They reject everything. Everything is relative. Everything is just, just your opinion, or you know, if you think this way, that's fine because it's your opinion. And I meet people here. I meet a lot of people that have this postmodernic view, and we all have to a certain degree. So that's a very important thing that a lot of people miss and don't know about. But I don't hold anyone accountable or say like, you should have, man, you should have, because I know like people are caught up in their own lives. They don't have the time to research, fact check all these things. So like if we don't have a dialogue, then how do they ever get introduced into these matters? And like, don't accept my word for it. I'm not an authority, but inquire these things for your own. And you can do this in many different ways. You can meditate, you can read a book, you can do research, you can talk about it with your friends, but do something or express it through art. Like for me, it's like everyone can do something, but it's not a universal thing. Everyone should do this. No, we all have different things to do, but it all like sticks together when we have a dialogue. When you are a painter, he is a writer, he is whatever it might be, but you're using these different qualities and you bring them together. Like we're not meant to all be painters. We're not meant to be all philosophers. We're not meant to all be researchers. So how do we use all these qualities together, and how can, like if someone is a worker, thinks more into practice and what a philosopher thinks. And of course, like in our society, the individual has a high level. So we put everything into the individual, like we all have to be able to do these things. But I think we have to reintroduce communion again, where spirituality is not just about you yourself meditating, but it's actually about us coming together as a whole and realizing our unity and our shared pain and our shared joy and all these shared daily interactions that we have, and through that we can heal each other, and heal is becoming whole, and that is the true mystic way. So I always
Yeah,
say,
really,
like,
man. But
everyone.
like, even that could come off new agey right then and there. Because like,
Mhm.
when you say that,
Yeah,
how do you
right.
imagine everyone coming together and being all happy and being respectful
No,
for
not,
each
not
other?
not
How are you
necessarily
gonna tell
happy.
that to the crack kid down the street? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
or the
we were
guy
like,
who wants to live on his ranch with a shotgun and who hates
yeah,
everybody.
but it's like, it's not, it's a developing thing. Like,
like
it's not
there's communities
something.
right now going on. I mean, like I go down to the farmers market all the time. I mean, like I don't.
Yeah, it's already there, but it's
What
just
are you talking
I
about?
think
not
Like,
at
that
the
we have
level.
to
are you
like.
talking about coming together on some common like understanding, like natural law type of stuff, or like what do you mean by coming together and sharing everyone's?
I
That
think that
everyone
you mean
shares their.
purely conversation, right? You mean just like being open to having conversations
Yeah,
with anybody.
besides your viewpoint, besides
Hmm.
your opinion, besides your daily practice, besides what your job is, what your status is, besides all these things, there's not being like, okay, I am at this way, you have to be at this way too. No, accepting people as they are. They might be a crackhead, sure, and you shouldn't say keep on with that. Like, if it harms
Yeah, there's something
themselves
wrong
or.
with that. They're destroying their lives, and they're
Yeah,
you know in a state where they're going to steal and violate other people. There's something wrong with
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know.
But still, you should look at that
So the
person
wavelength
might
of what people
still.
need to be on is morality and truth. That's the common wavelength that everyone can be on, and
Yeah.
yes, we can be able to say you should be on this, because if you don't, it fucks up the reality for other people. That's how it is. That's a new age trap. If you can't say you should do something to other people, that's a new age trap right there.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
they
like
tell
the
people.
guru
That's
would
it.
say
Pass
to
those slides, man. I
to
wanted
his
to show
crowd.
these before, but yeah, I was supposed
Hmm.
to be the primer, but yeah. Might have put things on a different
No,
trajectory,
no,
but
no. Like, it's good. That's what it's all about. Like, if you're just, this is the whole point by dialogue. Like, if I would be identified with my beliefs, then I would be able to fluctuate and think with you what you're saying. But what I'm saying is that we all have certain qualities, and even though we might not agree with each other, we still, and you might be a crackhead, but the crackhead, you can address them, and you can address, like, okay, these uh, these actions that you're taking, they're not for the right benefit, but still everyone has a quality within them. They might, doesn't matter at what stage they're at, but if you're judging them, if you're judging them as a person, you're saying, oh, you're a crackhead, or you're not a conspiracy theorist, or you're not like this, or you're not like that, then you're already creating a barrier. So I mean it in the sense that, like, of course, I might be a pioneer. I see unity as one of the first people, but I don't see unity out there or in here. No, the unity is all existing, and it includes all of us. All of us are souls. All of us are here to grow. And of course, some people grow in a manner that we don't like. They still be, you might call them sheep or whatever, but that's their journey. It's fucked up, whatever. But it's just how things are meant to be. But you might be right. Might be these are all just new age conceptions, and I'm just
and that
restating
doesn't mean
things.
like there's no truth to that. Of course there are, for sure, but it's just it's kind of a wishy-washy way to think that we can all just come together and form our community, and we can accept everyone's opinions more or less, but there's certain belief systems that just need to get eradicated from the human psyche altogether.
Yeah, but that only happens through dialogue, I would say. That's,
Yeah,
I see
yeah,
that
yeah.
as a remedy to all these things. And through dialogue, you can heal each other. Because, so, for example, if you would deal with something personal right now in your life and you're not talking about it, it'll cramp up. So in that way, we already are connected with each other. That way, if once you share it with someone else, you mean like, oh, he has pain too. Oh, he empathizes with what I have. Or I mean, might be dealing with something in which way I cannot help you out because I'm struggling myself. But then still, you just pick up a signal from another person and you realize, oh, maybe my pain isn't that separated. Maybe that's the whole problem, that we develop, that we experience everything in a separated state instead of focusing, like what I'm trying to say, This is something I've got from the Incas and the cosmic vision, where they don't see if you need to heal, that you need to heal, but we need to heal. That the healing process is not it's something shared. We all
Oh, yeah.
are in a
So
healing journey.
maybe, so
Everything
maybe
needs to heal, man.
when we're talking about this, and I am receiving a state of enlightenment, it isn't important that I realize that I am God, because what's important is that I realize that all y'all are God. Everybody is.
Mhm.
And that would be real enlightenment then, because that crackhead that shit himself on the subway next to you in New York or whatever, like, he is God just as much as you are. Like, in a way, like,
Exactly, that's what
so
I'm studying.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough because
A frequency of, and his frequency is pretty damn low at that level. But yeah,
it is very low,
at that unity
absolutely.
level, singularity level. But we're in 3D, and there's a lot of shit people got to deal with. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
But that's
yeah,
part of their
exactly.
growth. Like you shouldn't judge the person for that, but you should judge their behavior and correct them if they want
Yeah,
to.
hey,
But they should make the
that's another new
decision.
age thing right there, man. Like, I'm sorry to cut you off, but like the whole judgment thing, like we use judgment for the whole spectrum of things. If we didn't have judgment in our utility, our psychic utility, toolbox, we're not even going to evaluate the difference between good and bad. Even, we wouldn't even give a good opinions about people. Like, oh, you're giving that person did something cool. Hey, you're a cool guy. That's passing off good judgment to that person, So this whole idea, like, oh, the judgment thing, like,
No,
Oh yeah,
but
no.
we
It
can
can't be
objectively
like,
say,
oh,
like,
I
hey,
don't
so that
see
person
it.
shit his
I
pants,
don't.
is that cool? Does it smell good up in here? Like, I don't know, like,
No, the only
that
reason
doesn't
that
mean we
we
have to
can
call 'em
even
names and this and that,
identify.
like, we're just, if we just say, like, hey, man, like, you should really clean your act up together. We're trying to
yeah.
help someone. That's not really like a bad form of judgment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's why I make that distinction. Like you can judge like people's actions, but if you're conflicting their actions as who they are, you're missing the point yourself. Like they are not their behavior. Like everyone in themselves are perfectly whole as they are, but they on another level they do have to work on themselves and also align up their perception and that they see these things and that they act accordingly. But you cannot force it on anyone. They have to
Of
make
course not. Yeah, I
the
mean, like,
decision for themselves.
if people gets enough, like, if enough people tell that one person, like, hey, fix your shit, like, they might finally hear it for the, after the 100th time, like, oh, maybe I should, look into this stuff, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's what
people
that's
need to
what we come
call
out
people
to.
on their other bullshit. People need to hold themselves accountable, and at the same time,
Yes.
if people know the difference, hold other people accountable, because
Yeah. Yeah. No,
it
for
leads
sure.
towards harm for other people or themselves, and that's against natural law. It's against their own, human right.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like it's part of
Not to
human
harm.
nature to live in small communities, not massive metropoles, like not completely isolated. I think when you live in a community style, people do take care of each other. People do tell each other, hey, like, we need to fix this, we need to fix that. But it's important to know that the only reason that we know about a good way to live is because we see bad ways to live. And the one doesn't really exist without the other. Now, you can try and see, like, oh, I'm withholding all judgment, and that makes me spiritually more evolved or whatever. But honestly, I think it's probably more spiritual if you can understand your human nature and accept that you like certain things and you don't like other things, and you don't accept everything, uh, and you don't have to. I think that's a problem. Like, for example, there's a lot of strong opinions that we have about certain types of people. We think the world would probably be better off without them, and uh, you know, even might go as far as to be like, no, let's remove those life forms from our midst. It's actually a very natural way to think that way, but
Yeah. Yeah.
mm,
I
I don't know really if there is a right way to think about that.
hmm. Yeah, I really like appreciate Derek like being so real, because that is what you're saying, that the accountability, that is maybe an aspect to dialogue as well, like being able to say everything. But the problem is, like, a lot of people, they are not ready to hear the things that are what they need to hear. So align up with their preconceived ideas, so you can, like, okay, push it onto them, but then you're pushing them towards spirituality, which makes them receivable for all the pain that is inside of the world. So I think, like, we fortunately see certain things, and we hold each other accountable. That's very important. But we should not, I think we shouldn't, like, put someone on a path that they're not already onto.
I think we should examine our own intentions too. When it comes to our actions, we might, for example, address something that somebody is doing wrong, but we're doing it with the wrong intentions.
Yeah.
And so, like, I can, for example, address somebody that's very close to me who might have an unhealthy habit, and that's an addictive habit that I feel is very damaging to this person I love. And so, from the intention of love, I try to start a discussion with somebody about some type of behavior I want them to change. Then, however, you can try and address this type of behavioral change with somebody else, but do it from a completely different intention. Just, you want to see morally superior, and you know the healthiest way to live, and people ought to listen to you because you read way more books on the subject than they have.
Yeah.
That
just summarizes with the love of attraction. Like, we are all beings of love, and we have to appreciate each other. Even though there are certain things that we have to address, and people have to work on themselves. But if we don't start from a basis of love, then what do we attract? So we're getting out of time here. I think those are some closing words. Like, you, Derek, if there's anything you want to add, this is the moment. And
yeah, I mean, we're obviously speaking about the New Age and a negative connotation. There are really some really phenomenal things that are spoken about in the New Age, but basically, yeah, it's set up as from higher forces, not even human. Let's just put it that way. And yeah, satanic groups, even Mark Passio talks about it. He was in the Church of Satan working with Satanists, and he was told, like, just wait, man, we're all these New Age publications that we're going to pump out to the masses, man, these guys are going to get their minds fucked, and they're just going to be laughing it up about it. So just be careful. I mean, like, I'm not going to tell anyone to not look at anything, but people just need to be really discernful and meditate.
Watch out for people trying to sell you stuff.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'm hoping with this podcast, that I'm not trying to sell an idea. Like, maybe I got caught up in my ego and said some things that I believe in, that I personally hold. I have to, like, I appreciate you holding myself accountable, even though, like, maybe 90% of what I said is still true. Like, it's a tough pill to swallow. Like, just, oh fuck, I'm wrong with this, like, there goes my ego. But yeah, that's what True Growth is all about. Tjeerd, do you have anything to add before we close off?
Yeah, on a similar note, we've been kind of critical about New Age thinking. However, I have to credit so much positivity in my life to the things that I have learned from people from this whole circle. And it's very important to use discernment, ask questions, always remain a critical thinker, but keep your mind open, because there's definitely more going on, and information is hidden from us actively. So just be mindful of that, and then go out there and see what resonates with you.
All right. Okay, guys, thank you for being with me. And to the viewers, be sure to like and subscribe. Spread the message if you feel it. See if it reaches someone that needs it, because that's what it's all about. And yeah, keep up for new ones. And also, yeah, I think this is about it. So thank you again for watching.
Thank you for having us on. It was nice meeting you, Derek.
Yeah, great to talk to you, man. Sid.
All right.
Good stuff.
Good one. Thank you.
Jasper, thank you
Peace.
again, man. Awesome.
No problem.